It's about time for vacation. So every now and then, you feel like you gotta take a vacation, right? And just get yourself fully and completely refreshed. But even though that you're going on vacation, there's not really much of a vacation from these things, is there? Why should you be constrained to the same system day in and day out, the same device? We don't really get a vacation from our technology. And sometimes it's not only good to just do a regular vacation, but to also do a vacation from the operating systems that you use. Today we're going to take a look at a few different operating systems that you can be able to use to take a vacation. Just put them in a virtual machine where you can be able to get away from the everyday operating system you use and try something new. So there are a lot of different operating systems out there that you can use. Sure, we're all used to the big ones, Windows and Mac, but did you know that there was another operating system out there whose mascot was a penguin? And this operating system that I'm talking about is Linux. Linux is an open source operating system that was the pet dream of two separate people. On one hand, there was Richard Stallman. He was looking to create an open source variant of Unix that was not Unix at all, but was somehow compatible and kind of reflected the user space of it. On the flip side of the globe, there was a guy in Helsinki whose name was Linus Torvalds, and this guy wanted to learn how the lower level of a computer works, and he built an operating system kernel, which he aptly named after himself and Unix, and thus Linux was born as a kernel. He didn't expect it to go too far or to do very much, but it ended up becoming a really big and powerful system. The GNU software, married with the Linux kernel, created the GNU Linux system, which is now one of the biggest operating systems in the world today. It's run on millions of devices, from small embedded devices to the computers and desktops that you use. It's even shipped inside of Windows now, and it also runs on the majority of the world's smartphones. That's right, Android. Which leads me to the next operating system that we can discuss, Android. Sure, you can download, compile, and run Android yourself on any ARM-based device, but did you know you could also run it on an x86 processor? That means that you can run it on your computer at home. Anyone that has used a Bluetooth keyboard or mouse knows full well that you can take advantage of the basic desktop settings right there. Also, if you were to plug it into a dock, like on Samsung DeX, you can see that it's capable of replacing the desktop experience that you're used to in Windows or Mac. But Linux, even in the Android system, wouldn't be where it was today if it wasn't for another operating system called MINIX. MINIX was written by a professor named Andrew Tannenbaum, and this guy built a clone of Unix, but was made to be smaller, more concise and simple, and easy enough to be able to teach students how an operating system works. And he ended up continuing the operating system, allowing it to grow and to develop until today, to where now it can run on embedded devices. In fact, it's even running in some computers as a supervisor system over whatever you install. Whether it's Windows, Mac, or Linux, you still have MINIX in the background being able to watch over what you're doing. Now, don't let that chase you away from MINIX. You can still be able to download it and run it yourself, though it will require a bit more configuration out of the box than any of the other systems we've mentioned thus far. So that takes us to the next line of operating systems, which continue the legacy of Unix. A long time ago, in the University of Berkeley, California, in the computer science department, they decided to create a series of tools to work alongside Unix. These tools became known as the Berkeley software distribution, and as time went on, Berkeley interfused Unix code, and Unix interfused Berkeley's code, and eventually you came towards two separate systems that had the same kind of basic upbringing. Due to legal reasons with the Unix trademark and everything, BSD ended up going through a little bit of a renaissance, and it became its own operating system afterwards. After getting rid of all the Unix code, it became its own wonderful telltale beast. And you have three major variants of BSD. You have FreeBSD, NetBSD, and OpenBSD. And you also have other BSDs like Midnight or Dragonfly BSD. Now, FreeBSD is more focused on being feature-rich and compatible right out of the box. NetBSD focuses itself on portability, meaning it can run on any kind of hardware out there. Chances are, if you've got it, whether it's a PlayStation, a smartphone, or a desktop, you can be able to run and install NetBSD on that if you wanted to. You can't really do that so much with Windows, Mac, or even Linux. Now, there was a fork of NetBSD, which was more focused on security, and this became known as OpenBSD. OpenBSD has a bunch of parody songs of popular music, as well as neat artwork that you can find on its website. Being focused on security, this is the most clearest and concise code base out of all the BSDs thus far, and it really focuses on the idea of security through well-written and refactored code. But BSD is not the only system with Unix heritage. You have a couple others. One of them is Plan 9. Plan 9 is the actual true Unix of the modern day, and it actually implements more Unix features than Unix ever did. Being released by AT&T's Bell Labs before its eventual demise, Plan 9 was an operating system unlike any other. It had a distributed file system and allowed you to be able to see files from across the world as if they were on your own machine. This was a really powerful and well-written system and did not get half as much recognition as it deserves. But Plan 9 isn't the only one that actually descends from Unix. Unix source code, after splitting with BSD, came into the hands of different companies, and it became kind of hard to tell which one was which. This is when you get to the world of Macintosh's Next Step operating system, which eventually became Darwin and Pure Darwin, and you also have Illumos. Darwin is essentially the mock microkernel with the BSD, the FreeBSD user space on top of it. However, you don't have a window manager, so you're going to have to download and install one yourself onto the system, which might not be that great for most people. On the flip side, you have Illumos. Illumos is a really neat system with a bunch of different distributions and versions, and they even show you how they match to the Linux versions that are out there today. Being derived from Unix and from the Solaris and Open Solaris concepts, this operating system is really meant to be an enterprise-ready system that you can be able to use right now. But these aren't the only systems. Some of them with a heritage, such as ReactOS wanting to emulate Windows, comes back from the days of wanting to recreate a great operating system that eventually became outdated. And so you have Haiku. Haiku is an attempt to go back to the early days when BOS was around. BOS was ahead of its time, allowing really great and powerful multi-threading to be utilized. That system eventually went defunct, but it was kept alive through the OpenBOS, which later renamed itself to Haiku. Haiku is the modern-day BOS. Its goal is to become more POSIX compatible, as well as being backwards compatible with the old BOS applications. Really nice, really artistic, and really beautiful, Haiku is something that's really neat and worth a shot, especially if you want a refreshing take on your normal computing experience. Now, Haiku isn't the only one that goes back pining for another operating system. You have ReactOS. ReactOS is based off of Windows XP and Windows Server. The idea of ReactOS is to be binary compatible with most applications that you can run on Windows, meaning you can take your executable file or your old software and be able to install and run it without any hassle. But that's not the only thing. You have AROS, or the Amiga Research Operating System, with all its other little distributions out there that you can be able to download and run. This system tries to recreate the feeling and the atmosphere and the software that was used back in the days of the Amiga operating system. meaning to be backwards compatible with software on that, but also be forwards thinking on its own. Aros is a really neat idea that you should go ahead and check out if you want to get an idea of what Amiga would have ended up like today. Now that's not the only system out there that pines for the old feelings. You've also got FreeDOS. The idea of FreeDOS is to be a system that's compatible with MS-DOS to allow you to run all the old games, software, and applications that you could think of. Its goal is to be as fully compatible as possible, and really it doesn't focus on adding any new features, rather it focuses on giving you a completely open source, free, and well-defined way to run your DOS programs in the modern day. But DOS itself, thanks to the generosity of Microsoft, is now partially open source. That's right, you can go online to the GitHub page and download the actual source code of MS-DOS. Thus you can compile it, edit it, and run it yourself, so you can be able to still run completely pure and real DOS on your computer systems today. Now, DOS and FreeDOS are not the only operating systems out there that are focusing on recreating that DOS-like experience. There's another one called TempleOS, which seeks to merge modern programming concepts alongside DOS and the old Commodore 64 that a lot of retro computer enthusiasts are fond of. TempleOS was written by Terry A. Davis. This operating system had functionality that was ahead of its time. For a completely new Commodore 64 feeling, to see how it might have evolved, go ahead and download TempleOS and give it a shot. As a disclaimer, there are some biblical themed software in the system itself, so it might not be for everyone. But these aren't the only operating systems out there. You've got other ones such as Menuet OS, Calibri OS, Tawaru OS, and even J-Node. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. There are many more operating systems that you can be able to download and try. So go ahead, get yourself a VMware or a VirtualBox or even a QEMU installation on your computer. Go ahead and have a vacation from what you're normally used to using. You never know, you might actually find your new daily driver. So thanks for watching, and I hope that your vacation will refresh you and give you a new lease and a new look on what there is. Losers hit like, suckers hit subscribe, and Hattie hacking.